So my name is Sharanjit Singh. I'm the founder and director of Taraki. We work with Punjabi communities to reshape approaches to mental health. We've been going for about 5.5 years, and this is our first ever live podcast. And as I said, what an amazing turnout. Before I jump into the schedule for today, I just want to shout out all the people who have been involved with everything to make today happen. And without them, today really wouldn't be possible at all. So first, can I shout out the fantastic teams from Indy&Dr, who are sat either side of me. Go, clap,
Don't beg it, Karan. Don't beg it.
the teams from Cloud 9000 sat beside me. The fantastic team from Ox-Boy Productions who are doing all of the tech. This has not been easy. I'm a perfectionist and I rate them for working with me. And then finally the team from B2 Digital Strategies who helped us get the word out for what we're doing here today and get many of you here in this room. So in this space today, we're going to focus on some light, but then also some difficult topics. And I think what's important is that we all try and be compassionate, reflective and welcoming, not only in how we engage with ourselves, but how we engage with each other as well. I remember coming to events kind of like this when I was younger, and I'd be that one person kind of sat, not really talking to anyone, and wishing that someone would come and say, hey. So, whoever's here today, we want to make everyone feel welcome, and we all have a collective responsibility to do that. With that in mind, there's 3 rough aims for today. To develop a bit of an awareness around Punjabi men's mental health and Taraki's work regarding Jai in the city, and then also to feel inspired and feel positive about us moving forward in our communities. And then actually for us to know what we can do, because change doesn't come from one person or one organization, it comes from people. And unless people have that desire to push forward change, we're never really going to move forward effectively within our communities. Now, about the event, you kind of might be wondering why we're gathered here. So just a very quick bit about Taraki and the work that we do. So we work with Punjabi communities to reshape approaches to mental health. And we work with different parts of our communities in a whole host of different ways. We have 4 areas that we kind of try and leverage to enable change. That's mental health awareness, mental health education, peer support, and then also research. There's some of those cards on the bar, those lovely little tent cards. If you're at any point you want to learn more about Taraki and our work, just turn one of those cards around and it's got a bit of a description about some of the work that we do. You can also find out all the information you need on our website and on our socials. So within our work, we've got some thematic areas that we try and cover. And one of those thematic areas is around Punjabi men's mental health. And so today is a chance for us all to listen, learn and connect on this really pertinent but difficult topic. Our work around Punjabi men's mental health is basically encapsulated under the Jai in the City movement. That's the logo you can see up there. It's a beautiful logo designed by our branding team, and Avleen is somewhere here. Hand up, Avleen. Clap for Avleen for designing that, and Sunny in the beautiful mustard bomber next to him, matched with the Taraki logo he designed. So the Jai in the City movement, again, is our work focusing specifically on Punjabi men's mental health. And what we've done in this area so far, we've led a number of different media campaigns to drive forward mental health awareness for Punjabi men. We've run international testimonial projects that have gained tens of thousands of interactions and views on social media around Punjabi men's mental health. We've worked with healthcare workers, we've worked with universities, researchers to upskill them to think about how they can do better research or how they can support Punjabi men more effectively in the work that they do. We've worked with schools, we've worked with universities, and really Jai in the City is an encapsulating movement for Punjabi men's mental health. And just to let you know really quickly about some of the peer support work that we do. So I think an event like this is great to build awareness, but actually then what if there are people who want to get more involved? What if there are people who want to have more in-depth discussions? And actually we have supported Punjabi men's peer support spaces, so groups where Punjabi men can come and connect with each other, talk about the things that might be troubling them, and actually connect with people and build community. And the group in Birmingham is run by the Hira Foundation and Amrita. Amrita, hand up. She probably wouldn't have liked that. Apologies. But if you're interested in learning more about our Punjabi men's peer support work, just have a chat with Amrita, who coordinates a lot of that work here in Birmingham. If you're interested in running a group at some point in the future yourself, if you're from Birmingham or surrounding areas, that kind of thing, have a chat with me, have a chat with Amrita, and we can kind of progress those forward. But back to today. Please do sit back and relax as we move into the live podcast segment of this event. For the next 75, 90 minutes, we're going to be recording the live podcast, which will be a conversation between myself, Indy&Dr, Cloud 9000, and they'll introduce you to their real names when we do the introductions. And we'll be talking all things around mental health within Punjabi communities, Punjabi men's mental health. And there'll be time for a Q&A at the end. The Q&A won't be recorded. There's the podcast section will be, but the Q&A won't be. And then there'll also be time to kind of chill, have a bite to eat afterwards. So we're hopefully going to be wrapping up the podcast recording, I would say about 4:45, 5 o'clock. And then if you're around, I'm going to go have a munch in the massive food hall over there. And we'll be there to chat, to chill, and to connect with people. So please get involved, please connect with others, and please take the energy home. We don't want this to just be something that sparks now, but really this is about how can we take this energy into our homes, into our communities to enable that change. So we look forward to connecting with everyone today. Please feel free to share anything you want on socials. Talk about the event, talk about the work that we're doing, talk about Punjabi men's mental health. And we look forward to connecting with everyone as the day goes on. So we're ready to go in? All good from the tech side? You meant to say lights, camera, action, innit? Can you say it? Oh, thank you there so much. So welcome to Chai in the City, a space where Punjabi men can talk about mental health, well-being, and positive community action. So my name's Sharanjit Singh, the founder and director of Taraki, who work with Punjabi communities to reshape approaches to mental health. And we're the curators of the Chai in the City movement. And I'm very delighted to be your host today. I don't know, is the host the right word?
Host, moderator, DJ, jo bhi karo.
MC.
I like MC. Okay, cool. All right, I'm your MC today. We're really, really grateful in today's discussion to be joined by some amazing friends who are going to be contributing to this really engaging conversation. But before we dig into the depths of everything, I'm going to ask them, it's probably the most serious question I've asked someone. Okay.
So you got that?
All right, so what I want you guys to do, just introduce yourselves, a bit of the work you do, what brought you here today. And what's your favorite kind of prota?
Got to say it.
Yeah, is that right? That's all right. And please don't fight. We have an audience, please don't fight.
If I say aloo, you can't say aloo.
No.
Okay.
All right, in that case, you're going to go last then.
All right.
We'll start on this side.
Hi guys, my name is Amrit, and I've been following Taraki for a while actually now, so I've been watching from afar the work they've been doing, so it's been like a bit of a privilege to come here and be on the panel with you guys. So me and Naman, we kind of like work, we do a podcast on Cloud 9000 as well. It's like a social media page that we started, like Aman started in 2020. I'll let him tell you more about Cloud 9000.
Aman started it. Aman.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, huh? मैं कुछ नहीं कहता ना.
So I'll let him tell you more about Cloud 9000. But yeah, so in terms of the prota, it is actually aloo prota.
Guys, please, we don't want fights. Please.
But then it also depends on the mood as well. Like, so sometimes, although I love aloo prota, I do like, the plain prota, when you used to do the
You can't take two, man.
सारे आंदे तू परोठे ले जाना यार.
I'll have to throw the gopi prota in there now. But yeah, probably, I think I'll lose.
3 परोठे. सारे कह दे.
Why don't we talk about your egg paratha?
Oh, yeah, so...
What paratha?
Egg paratha with
Andele
avocado
paratha?
as well.
Yeah, so I make a little specialty, you just throw some eggs onto the pan and then you throw a prota on top of it. And then No, honestly.
Sunny side up and everything.
No. So it's like an omelette. You just mash up the egg and stuff, right? Okay, yeah, throw it on like an omelette. And then put a prota on top of it, flip it over.
Please don't call the emergency services.
And then you roll it
things
up.
up.
And then you roll it up and that's it. It's like an egg prota there, ready and done.
That is the reason why we have a doctor. We have a doctor here.
Okay. All right, I'm Indy. I'm one half of the Indy&Dr podcast. Thank you for having me and Doctor here today. So Yeah, we started the podcast when 2021 January. Yes, January 2021. Been through a bit of a rebirth, changed it up a little bit to make it more relatable, resonate with more people, and yeah, it's been amazing. Our growth, the change that we've seen in the last year. This time last year, what happened? We were just struggling really with how it was going.
I wouldn't call it struggling. ਤੂੰ ਕੀ ਸੀ ਅੰਦਰ ਸਾਰੇ ਨਾਲ?
Me and Doctor had like a bit
I was
of a
very
chat.
happy.
He was happy. I was like, "Where's this going? You know, are we
Very
going to
lively,
make this
pointy,
restart real? Like, what's going on?" But yeah, we did a bit of a pivot. It's worked out well, and
Just to
yeah,
be
it's
clear,
been
that pivot was basically we started complaining about our wives, and the numbers went.
yeah, that's exactly
That's basically it.
Now you can't go on explore page on Insta without seeing one of your
Thank
faces.
you. So yeah, man, a aloo parathe is my favorite, but I'm gonna have to say plain parathe because that is quite easy, low calorie. You know, gotta consider that. Little bit of anchor butter on top, not margarine. Those that have margarine, give your head a wobble. No, butter, only butter. Ants don't eat margarine, okay? They only eat butter. Remember that. So that's my choice. I don't have anything else to add, but Gordon's gonna have a weird one, I'm sure. Actually, no, I know your one.
You know mine.
Yeah, I know
yeah.
your one. Actually,
Okay.
go on. Yeah.
So guys, hi, my name is Karan. I'm the other half of the Indy&Dr podcast. I am a real doctor. I get asked this a lot actually, but I actually do medical things. So that's number one. Favorite paratha for me is actually avocado wale parathe. Now, I didn't know these existed until very recently. Somebody made one for me, and I was like, yo, you can put avocado in a paratha. Now, and the other one is dal wale parathe. Who's had dal wale parathe? Raise your hand if you had dal wale parathe.
Oh, wow. Whoa, that's way more than I expected.
So I
Okay.
said this to Indy, right? And he's like, bro, so like, I'm going to give him a Brahmi accent now. He doesn't have one. But bro,
Yeah,
it's like...
I'm the least Brummy person.
No, it's like,
possible.
bro, it's like, is the dal like coming out the paratha? Like, if you rip the paratha, does it just like leak out? I'm like, that's not dal wale parathe, man.
That's exactly how it goes.
But we're very happy to be here today. We want to forward this discussion. Guys, everything we're going to discuss here happens in everybody's homes, right? The point is, let's have open, honest discourse and have a shared space where we can broaden our perspectives and understanding. That is the point. We're in a world now where everyone is so polarized, you're right and I'm wrong. That's not it. Everything literally is great. Everything is about context, so let's have an honest discussion here today. With that said, you can't have...
That went bare serious, bro. But it's true. It's true.
That's what he
true.
does.
That's what happened. Your doctor, gallaw ho jandiyan. Now, you can't take an avocado wale parathe.
Yeah, I wasn't going there, don't worry. Hi everyone, my name's Aman from Cloud 9000. We started in 2020. Again, like Indian Doctor, it took a bit of a pivot in, I'd say a couple of years ago, where we focused more on YouTube content. It sort of spans from, well, it derives from the feeling of feeling on Cloud 9. We just want to make you feel great. You know that feeling, oh, I feel great today. We want you to feel great when you watch our content, hopefully, a bit of escapism. We did a mental health project in 2021 called Clouded Consciousness. And ever since then, I've been on Shuranjit's case, like we need to do another project. And we are finally here today. So thank you all for coming here. And hopefully we can give you some valuable insight.
I've got a quick question. You know the hoodie? Is that Cloud 9000 one?
It's a Cloud 9000.
Yeah, that's actually paying. That's like, Sonny, look at the hoodie. It's very nice. Now we'll look after.
You know the best thing about this hoodie is, Indy and I have them. I got one and I thought, "Kitne paise hai le?" But good investment, but it's so warm. In my house, it's the only thing I wear because it keeps me so good.
It's amazing. Sonny made us these really nice patches, like these Taraki patches, and they're absolutely beautiful. And I couldn't decide what to put it on, so I just super good magnets to it, and I just magneted. It's a
Smart
it's a
choice.
price. It's a desi remedy to that, man. It's all good. Perfect. Lovely. Thank you all so much.
I think, yeah, what's your favorite paratha, man?
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
back
yeah.
to- yeah.
Do you know what? This one's actually discarded a lot, but I love a gobi paratha.
Oh.
But I don't like it when it's two halves stuck together. So I get it at home, and they're like, "Oh, it breaks when we make it if you make it in a single form." But I like a single form broken gobi paratha.
ਤਾਂ ਇਹਦਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਹਲੇ
Yeah, I'm getting away with it.
Well, I don't think I shared my paratha.
Yes.
Mine's a sad one because I can't have it anymore. So I used to really like cheese paratha.
Ooh.
I'm not gonna lie. Then I found out I was lactose intolerant.
What kind of cheese?
You know what?
ਪਨੀਰ
Not
Panier,
you know what,
panier
just
parathe.
any
But
cheese,
sure,
any
Stilton.
cheese. I
Well,
don't
you want
know,
blue
man.
cheese
Anything
paratha?
that gives me a bit of a
Blue
gives
cheese.
it a bit of a kick in it. Gives it a bit of a kick.
Okay.
But yeah, since I can't have milk, that's it, man.
I'm
Taking it
lactose
away.
intolerant, but I don't care. Pizza's life. So.
No, lovely.
ਇੰਡੀ ਤੂੰ ਵੀ ਦੱਸ ਦੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਕੰਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਸਾਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ
We don't need to talk about me all the time. It's okay. Don't worry.
We're sharing
It's all
medical
good,
conditions
it's all good.
That's actually what the whole thing's about.
ਸਾਰੇ
guys.
ਬਿਮਾਰ ਪਏ
Perfect. Lovely. Well, thank you all guys so much. I'm glad we didn't that didn't descend into a fight. I think it could have. And when I heard avocado brought out, it made me I did.
It's elite, man. It's elite. Until you tried it, you don't know.
Perfect. Well, kind of jumping from that, the first thing I just want to open with, I don't think a conversation like this, in this kind of space, in this kind of way, having such an amazing audience, would have been possible, 5 or 6 years ago. I think it would have been quite hard to imagine, especially we're thinking so deeply around the kind of mental health conversation. And I guess like my main question is, what's changed? What do we think has changed in that time to allow us to be able to do this now? Something must have changed.
I think one is definitely that more people are open with their vulnerability. So if I took from my personal space, in 2021, I went through a really bad bout of anxiety. And at the time, I didn't realize I was anxious. And for a lot of people, if you've not been through mental health, when it's happening, you don't realize it's happening. So when you look retrospectively, and Raj remembers, he was there, I remember telling him about it. When you look back at it, it's very clear the signs. But when I came out of it the other side, and I started sharing my story with a lot of doctors at the time, they were like, oh, we feel exactly the same way. And I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, but no one talks about it. We all sit here in groups, like in a room like this, and we're all thinking we have the same problems. And I always say we have the same problems in life, but different stories and narratives, i.e. different families, different circumstances. But the problems at the root are very, very similar. And so what I found is when I started sharing, it gave me permission to keep sharing, and that impacted somebody else. So I think definitely one of the things is sharing your vulnerability, online spaces, anonymously, however you want to do it from stages, has become, an easier thing. I think that's definitely been good.
Nice.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that I think at least as well is like you see it happening a lot more. So I think social media certainly has helped in that sense as well. Maybe like even if you're watching some sort of YouTube video on social media, where you're seeing a lot more people come forward and talk about these sort of things, it kind of makes you, in a similar way to what Doctor is saying, it makes you think, oh, I'm actually going through that thing at the same time too. So that certainly does help. I think seeing it a lot more around you, happening a bit more often, and seeing it on social media does kind of make you think about your own feelings, about your own thoughts and so on as well. And I think if you see some spaces opening up and so on, so I think a lot of people are ready for that engagement, but they had never probably had that same opportunity as we do now, like let's say like 5 or 6 years ago, perhaps.
So we're saying people still wanted to then, but they weren't the right
Yeah,
channels for that to
I think there is a possibility of that. Yeah, I think to think that perhaps nobody wanted to share anything back then might be just with a kind of, I don't know, like a closed view, but then I think it's more about the spaces opening up for people and opportunities that we see more often now. And I think it's, it's people like yourself that are kind of providing that opportunity and so on, which probably wasn't there 5, 6 years ago, for example.
Taking a step aside and step back from the Punjabi space itself, mental health is very, I'd say, fashionable at the moment.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
in a bad way, but
We look sick.
But it is very spoken about in professions now. So you notice in football, if I name a few, Jesse Lingard, Marcus Rashford, they came forward and spoke about how they found it very difficult to go through their struggles and not be able to talk about it. Meanwhile, us as the neutrals on the outside were looking in, saying they're playing terribly, they're really shit, what's going on? We don't know what's going on with their circumstances. When they come out and talk about it, you're like, I shouldn't have said that. Now we're in a position where we're like, how do we give somebody the benefit of the doubt that something happening mentally, which is impacting them physically on the pitch or with their actions or how they act around people? That's changing. But I think the next step is, how do we identify that, give somebody a bit of a break, and then allow them to get back to some normality? And that's very difficult to sort of navigate in a world where everybody wants things right now, or we want things immediately.
And I think what you mentioned there is actually one of the reasons we started at Taraki, right? So, I started Taraki 5.5 years ago because of my own experiences of mental health challenges. And my experiences of mental health challenges was when I transitioned from home, which is Handsworth, big up Handsworth.
You. B21.
Absolutely. Handsworth to uni, and I left the city to go to uni. And essentially that transition wasn't easy. And those difficulties, I realized what I was going through. I got the support that I needed from my friends at the time. I realized that there were plenty of other people who were going through similar challenges in our communities, but they weren't able to get that help. But there was a lot of conversation at that point around men's mental health in the media. But when I would speak to people about it, obviously, Jeremy Clarkson, Steve, them guys talking about their mental health doesn't get through to, up in there, right? Like, especially up and above there. Exactly. And so what we started at the beginning was our kind of testimonial work. So people who looked like they were from our communities, people who were recognized and connected with different parts of our communities were able to talk openly. And it kind of as you mentioned, just open up that space a bit. That people did want to talk, but there was no space for it.
Even from a language perspective, I remember I was giving a talk once, I think it was at like a Gurmukh camp or something, and they said, can you do a bit of mental health as a doctor and what you see in hospital? And I was like, okay. And I actually sat down, I was like, I actually don't know, what is the Punjabi word? I asked you guys here actually, what is the Punjabi word for depression? Does anybody actually know? I sat there, do you know?
Yeah, no,
anybody know what the
I was gonna say
Punjabi word for
depression,
depression
but
is? And literally, we always just say, tu jada dukhi ho gaya. Oh, we got an answer? I actually don't know. I'd have to look it up. I have to Google it, right? But I was like, oh, we just say, tu jada dukhi hai. And we just kind of belittle it. And I'm like, well, we know in kind of, medical land, there's things like bipolar, schizophrenia. There's all these actual medical conditions. If we don't have a word for it, how are we going to talk about these things? And that was the first time. And I was like, okay, there is something here. We need to start giving language to what we're talking about. We can't just say, oh, you're a bit down, to keep you are.
And the wild thing with that is even within the English language, those terms are only just over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And so
And mental health has lasted,
exactly.
the only difference was 100 years ago, they used to burn people in the pagal ho gaya, let's just burn you in it.
Well, that is it. That is it. We just say, oh, pagal ho gaya. That's it. It's a bit of a taboo subject, and I think we're still on the journey. Obviously, Taraki, organisations like this are spreading the word more, but there's still a long way to go because it is a taboo subject in the Punjabi community.
And you get generic advice. Tu
Yeah.
theek ho jana.
Yeah.
Paat karya kar. Don't worry, byah kar la.
Or they give up.
Yeah, no, but as in, it's just like, everything's will be fine. It's kind of the brush under the carpet.
Brush it under the carpet.
Because what I found is, unless somebody's actually experienced mental health, when you're trying to relate with them, they just don't get it and they'll be like, everything will be fine. Oh yeah, I can see where you're coming from. But it's not genuine empathy. But how can somebody empathize if they've not been through it, let's say? So when we're having these conversations, you want to go there with people, with organizations who can actually say, okay, recognize this is what it is, but what's the next tangible step? And that's what Indy's saying. It's like, okay, what next now?
And you touched on it a bit there, Aman, the kind of the taboo discussion. And there's a load of different obstacles in it when we try and have these conversations.
Yeah.
You want to talk a bit more about the taboo part, and then I want to open it to others as well. What other obstacles exist in these conversations? Because things have changed a bit, but there still are.
Yeah, I mean, I had an experience in the family recently, and then obviously that opens my eyes, and then you get to know more about it. It helped that the person that we went to see was an uppity therapist. So, maybe not even having that resource to go to, that's an obstacle because you're like, well, if I don't even speak the language, what am I going to do when I go there? So I think that's one. Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think I've if you talk a bit from like an Indian perspective in India as well, you are starting to hear these words a little bit more. Like I am starting to hear it around my family saying, oh no, depression ho gaya, idda ho gaya. No.
Yeah.
But I still think they fully don't comprehend what that means. And I think whilst some people do recognize that person's going through depression, they still kind of find there's like a lack of like care for that person as well, like lack of like knowledge as to what to do with that knowledge.
And I find this again with upcoming patients, it's if somebody has, I don't know, they need an operation, that's seen as a real condition.
Yeah.
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਦੀ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਹੈ, because you can't see it.
You
per
can't
se.
see it, yeah.
No, it's not real. Like, no, ठीक
I think that attitude still is here in India too as well. But although they're starting to talk about words like depression, I've heard my mum say, this person's going through depression or that person. But I still think like there's a lack of knowledge or a lack of understanding of what it actually means. And I think a lot of times our parents perhaps, have gone through that themselves, in the past, especially when they'd first migrated over and so on. They probably wouldn't have realized what the experience is actually normal and it's what everybody else is experiencing. So I think it's kind of come down from that. And now when they see that in their kids and stuff, and it's not so much that they're failing to recognize it, it's failing to understand as to like how to counter that because nobody was there for them and they just kind of got on with things. And this is what they think. I think the taboo element is still very much there though. And I think the taboo element is just not in our parents' generation, but also I think in our own generation too. I don't know how everybody feels about that, like if they felt this as well, but sometimes, you kind of see stories of perhaps somebody has committed suicide or perhaps who struggled a lot and sort of given up. At that point, we kind of have like this sort of sympathy feeling, right? But then if that person had posted online about what they're going through, sometimes we also automatically think that person's seeking like attention or something. So there's always that, I think. So sometimes you've got to look within as well. Because you can't just always, one perception is to like say, oh, this is a taboo in the Asian community, but then as being part of that itself. So I think there's a lot of like self-assessment that needs to be done is like how you deal with things or how you feel when you see certain things where people are talking about depression or the anxieties and so on. And I think we sometimes fail ourselves, but then also like the people in that sense too.
I mean, when it happened in your family recently, did that make you kind of introspect into your own mental health?
Not yet. Probably should, but you just become so concerned for the person, and then you learn more about what it is, what are the resources available. I think something that you touched upon a couple of minutes ago, it's, when the elder generation, the previous generation came over, a lack of framework. There was a lack of framework, lack of resources.
Because if you think about it, you're put on a plane, you're told to go to a land you've never been to,
£5 in your
can't speak
pocket.
the language, however many bears sit in your pocket, depending on the parent. Go and live with a family member you've probably not seen in years. You're now there, you're sending money home, you're probably gonna get married over here, find someone here, settle a new life, deal with daily racism, probably have to cut your hair if you're a singer trying to get work. So you go through all of these trials and tribulations, you come to today, and you think, I've had this much happen to me, and now you expect me to talk about that much today. That's not gonna happen. And we look at what our parents do, and we think, okay, my parents don't talk about it, why would I talk about it or go and see someone? So trying to get that conversation of seeing someone's important. I'll be honest, I'm trying to get family members of mine to go and see someone. They're not open to it. I've seen someone. It's taken me 2 and a bit years to comb through everything that's bothered me or anything that's made me the way I am, to understand myself properly. I still see a counsellor once a month. And
What's
I feel
the
like
value you
it
get
keeps
from
me
that,
going.
Indy?
Sorry?
What's the value you get from seeing a counsellor?
You know what? It's a space where you can go and speak to someone and no one's judging you. You can say the deepest, darkest things about yourself and no one's going to sit there and correct you. They're not going to be like, no, don't say that. They'll be like, why do you feel that way?
I thought that's what the podcast was, man.
It was that. But it's a way for you to speak to somebody who won't judge you. They have no preconceived notion of you. You can paint whatever narrative you want about yourself. You can lie to your therapist if you want, but you're only lying to yourself and wasting your own money. So be as open and honest as you can.
How did you feel? How did you get to that level of comfortability knowing that you can trust them? Because I'm listening to that now and I'm thinking 2 months.
It took me months. I couldn't give you a number. It took me a long time. I opened with some softball stuff, and then eventually I'd go in with something that impacted me that week, and that would unlock something that happened X amount of years ago. And they'd say, draw parallels there, where that comes from, and then you'll get a memory pop into your head. I like to write things down on my phone that bother me, and then I'll go and talk to my therapist and say, this bothered me. She'll be like, why? And then you draw into it, and an hour goes by, and you think, where did that just go in front of me?
And so what I'm hearing, like, in the discussion about obstacles, we've spoken about kind of community level stuff around taboo and stigma and all that. But actually, there's a really strong conversation here about the adequacy of services and thinking about how can we connect people with help who want the help. Because just as you mentioned, there's people who might need a bit of support, but they're not able to access the right support.
It's very true.
Yeah.
And that's a service level issue, and that means that the services that are running aren't able to kind of cater properly for our communities.
Or they're not properly signposted. That's the other big thing that happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's complex, isn't it? And like one of the key things from Taraki's side is that when we have these conversations, we don't want to blame our communities in that kind of way. We don't want to stand here and say, oh, we do this wrong, we do that wrong, we do this wrong, this isn't working. Actually, we know there's so much that works. We know there's so many people doing amazing things. Actually, sometimes they just aren't supported properly, and sometimes things just needs to be tweaked a bit so we can support ourselves and support each other more effectively. So I think it's complicated, and I don't want to sit here and talk down at the communities that we're all from, because we want to be hopeful, and we want to be able to look to the future positively, and we want to be able to think about a future that can be better for all of us.
We want Taraki.
There we go. That was it. All right, we're done now, guys. Perfect. So, we've spoken a bit about the obstacle side of things. That was a bit of a kind of generic conversation on the obstacles. When we're thinking about Punjabi men, are there specific obstacles there? Are there, certain things, certain experiences that make these conversations harder?
I think one of the biggest ones is the masculinity that we have as Punjabi men. I think is probably the biggest obstacle.
Shit, yeah.
But that's like and I think also masculinity, but then also comes into like perceptions and caste. I think is a big obstacle as well. Like a lot of people that are like say, well, we're Jats, okay, yeah, we're like superior.
Number one.
And, like this whole concept, like Aman is saying, like Shariasi, and that sort of thing, right? Okay, yeah, the very thought is like that sort of stuff, doesn't hurt us. So I think that's one of the biggest obstacles, at least anyway, in terms of like when you're thinking about it as Punjabi men. It's about recognizing what actually masculine, like what masculinity is. It's not something that you've seen in films the whole time, like growing up, or perhaps what you've been told. And
We all think it's Sunny the All-Important.
yeah.
That's
so-
like the alpha male.
Exactly, yeah, you know, hairy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's this about growing out of that and realizing what actual masculinity is. It's, you know, perhaps if now we're in a space where we are talking about mental health, but imagine this is in a pub, right? Okay, yeah, I don't think we'd probably have the same conversations and so on because of like that toxic kind of culture that we've had in the, like, or we've grown up at least in as well. And I think that's one of the biggest obstacles to Punjabi men.
What is the toxic culture you're referencing? Be specific.
So like just this whole caste system that we have in place, just whole thinking about like, you know, what a warrior should be and shouldn't be,
Okay.
what
if I-
should or shouldn't hurt you.
Okay, if I put everybody in a room, they're all the same cast, now what?
I don't know, it would just depend. Like, for example, it comes down to like, honestly, I feel like
I think what ties into it, sorry to interrupt, but what ties into it is we've got this in the Asian community a lot of log ki kahenge, right?
Yeah.
Or what will people say, right?
Mm.
And so, you know, what did the elder generation do in the free time that they had when they weren't working? They were in the pub, or they were socializing at a family function. And what was the common denominator there? It was alcohol, often. Not saying, you know, that's always the case, but there's nothing else there. And then for someone at that time, in that generation, to go out and seek help,
Yeah.
and even if a whiff of got out to that family or his friends there, they're really perceiving what they would look,
Reputation.
you know, how they would look, and then that comes into Amrit saying, you know, how do we look to others when we're seeking help?
And the other thing is this notion, it's really good to say shared banake, right? It's the idea that weakness, if you want to call having mental or any bamari weakness, is perceived as this shouldn't happen.
Mm.
You're not allowed, it's kind of, there's
Yeah.
no permission.
it's
You're the
the
breadwinner,
attitude
you're
more
the
like
banda, you need to just be number one.
apni problem nahi, goreyan di problem hai. It's more like that.
Whereas Superman, this is the problem, man. You
Yeah,
just think you're
that's
invincible.
the thinking behind it. ये गोरियां दी problem है, आप जड़े बेले लोगों दी problem है.
hear
That's
that
the
a lot,
very
yeah.
much thinking, I think, and that it comes down to like we're hardworking. You just get on with things.
And I think just to kind of build on the masculinity point, I've always found this like mega interesting because ideas of masculinity and all that, they change over time and they
Yeah.
can change. So I remember when I was, I don't know, I want to say 13, 14, I had these 6 bare skinny jeans from Top Man in it, yeah. All right. Actually, no,
Super
these
skinny.
Yeah, no, they were so skinny. Went to the Godra on these jeans.
Otte phatagi, huh?
All right, so I'm walking minding my own business. I think walking towards Langador, and I see my mama stood there, right? And he looks at me in these jeans, and he starts creasing. And he turns to his mates who are there, and they all start creasing. You know, oh, why have you got your sister's jeans on for? I was like, I don't know, man. So I just carried on walking, and I remember, you know, Mum's here, and this is one of the fantastic things Mum did at that, out of the many things at that age. Went home, told Mum about it, and I was like, you know, why is it bad if I am wearing my sister's jeans? Like, they're literally just, you know, it's just fabric I'm wearing on my legs. And Mum looked at me and said, forget what he's saying. You do what makes you feel confident, what makes you feel you. So I went back, you know, in those jeans. Bro, 6 months later, I went in and bare people wearing the jeans, man. I'm like,
Starting the trend, man.
Yo, I was like, something's changed. Something's changed here. And suddenly, you know, people are allowed to do this thing. They weren't allowed to do the thing before. And something has changed in like people's thinking, people's thought to
permission.
to make it okay.
Yeah.
The permission, so that these things change over time. And like for me, that's what gives me the most such a big amount of hope for this work, is that we might say, you know, kind of the way masculinity is communicated, that kind of stuff can be really harmful and all that, but these things can change.
Yeah.
In terms of how guys talk to each other, in terms of how guys talk to each other, have you ever noticed when you're on the phone to someone and you say, get done, how you doing? Yeah, good. How are you? Yeah, good.
All good.
Or you just have half my
But being
conversations.
honest, if you have that conversation 10 times, you're going to say you're good or okay 10 times. You're never really okay. Let's be honest. There's always something there.
But you need the deeper question, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need a deeper version of like, how are you, to take it to another level, to get deeper into a conversation.
What would you ask? That's because I completely agree.
I genuinely don't know, and sometimes I have to say to them, be real with me. How actually are you? And I know that's patronizing, but what's actually going on? Like, how's everyone at home? How's your wife? How's work? How are the kids? How's everything going just overall? Tell me about you. And then you give them like a bit of a broader avenue to be like, well, this is kind of bothering me. That's one-to-one. Now, saying that in a group of guys, no fucking chance you're going to get anything. It's incredibly difficult to get any guy to explain any kind of vulnerability. Yeah.
Unless one opens, right?
And sometimes it might be an avalanche. Sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. We had this with my schoolmates. I think it's just post-lockdown, pre-lockdown, something like that. And one was like, oh, I got this bimari. And then I was like, oh, yeah, well, I'm going through this. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm going through this. It was all there. It was all there the whole time, but no one fell. In our WhatsApp groups, it's all like, ha, ha, funny, funny, funny. Sending memes, yeah. And then you get together really, and you're like, oh. But the thing is, you need that safe space, because you're not going to have that conversation. I'm not going to... Somebody said this to me. They were from India, and they were shadowing me in hospital. And they're like, you guys walk past each other in the corridor and go, oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. And you just walk off. And he goes, no one actually wants to know the answer to that. I said, yeah, that's just normal in England. But you don't walk up to people and be like, how are you really? That's like, it just, you have to be on a certain level to go there with someone as well. And you have to have the willingness to listen, to really listen. To be an active listener is very, very hard. No one has the time and attention these days, man.
That's very true. I saw I can't remember who it was. I saw somebody on Instagram. They went to one of the European countries. I think it was in the Netherlands. And there, if you ask somebody, how are you? They will literally stop and tell you how their whole day is going. And you just wouldn't expect to hear that response as like someone from England who hasn't got the time of day. That's it. Yeah.
Imagine that in London.
I can tell you firsthand, mate. No one's answering you.
How are you? Piss off, mate.
Yeah. Get out
Good
my seat,
morning.
man.
But you're talking about listening, right? How do we listen? Because
That's the question, man.
That's bare hard, and people have said to me, something my dad says to me. He said to me once. He goes, "You got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
That's it.
You should be listening twice as much as you speak." I know this is ironic, given that we're all just talking to each other and there's a whole audience of people listening. But
Plenty of ears, though.
How do we listen? How do we listen? Like,
There's a couple of ways of listening, isn't it? So there's some people listen simply to respond, and you have those people where they're just waiting to, I just want to make my point, and they're just waiting to jump in, right? Then you've got the people who selectively listen, which is, you has anything? No,
He's laughing at him.
This is basically their podcast, right?
I see him laughing.
Right, so you have selectively listening, which is people basically zone out. And they'll switch on when it's something relevant to them, and then they'll come in. And then you have the highest form of listening, which is empathetic listening or active listening, where you listen to understand. And that's when you just let people have that kind of golden space, that minute, and then you just come back. And the comeback is normally, if you want to go deeper, is you ask them another question. And it's question. Then you will really get to the meaning, and you'll find it's something there.
That was bang on. Yeah. No.
Hole in one. What a done.
but I think it's the being able to listen is it's really underrated, but there's also a point in that about like being able to listen and then someone feeling heard, because I can.
How do you do that without being contradictory? Sorry, not contradictory.
Kind of
without being
patronizing.
condescending.
Yeah.
That's the word. Without being like, so you mean this?
And
then that's very reductionist.
No. It's language, isn't it? Just so I'm clear. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
But that again, if you say that, it sounds like
No,
you're
it's
talking
how you
down
say
to
it. So
people.
that's the choice of words you use. You've got to be intentional with your language. Don't use condescending language.
I
And again, you wouldn't have that
tone as
conversation.
well.
Yeah.
Tone. When it comes to tone, oh, sorry, just clarifying. Is that what you mean? Wait, sorry, mate, just want to check.
Yeah.
I've got a kind of little bit of a question building off that. In your lives, if I say good listener, who pops into your head? Like, is there someone, and why does that person pop into your head? And if there's no one, then
It's Raj. Raj is my good listener.
okay.
And
Yeah.
he's mine.
So, and then is he your?
Probably.
Probably.
They're working on this little love triangle forming here.
So why?
Why Raj? So I think with Raj, I've known Raj a very long time. He's one of my best friends, and we never liked each other when we first met each other. But that aside, I think with Raj, he holds space very well. And this isn't something I understood until I actually needed him to hold space. Because before that, it's all very high-level banter, we're good friends type stuff. But he offers non-judgment. And when he's giving advice, he's not giving advice. That's when I knew he knows how to hold space. He's asking me to reflect, so I get to my own place of this is what I need to do, rather than him telling me this is what you should do. So he doesn't listen 2 minutes and say, just do this. We'll have discourse, we'll get to a point where I understand what the actual issue may or may not be, and he'll be like, what do you think you need to do? And then I'll go on that, and then we'll review in whatever next week, whatever. So he knows how to hold space, and that's why he's a good listener for me.
Having a supportive spouse as well that will let you do that is important. So there's a running joke between me and Doctor, which is he's my other half, but my real other half, Sanj, she holds space very well. And she'll listen to anything that I'm going through because I have a lot going on all the time. Like
Here's a
my
lot.
head is just mayhem all the
Constant.
time. It consistently is. And that's how I live. And she looks at me like, you are chaotic. But the fact that she gives me time and space to be able to sit, speak, say what I need to, I want to repay that to her afterwards as well. So I can give her space and let her
Pay the
be.
bills, that'll make her happy.
Huh? Or what?
Pay the bills, it'll make her
Pay
happy.
the bills is definitely, yeah. But having a supportive spouse is really underrated, genuinely. And if you tell your spouse you're going through X, Y, and Z, if they give you the ability to go through that and support you and not talk down at you or belittle you or whatever, that is gold.
Yes.
Any ideas for listeners?
Well, yeah, something that Amrit actually said to me the other day. He said, "A duck shared is a duck halved." I've got a tendency, I do clam up a bit. I just
Is that on a t-shirt? That should be sick in it.
This is something I heard in Bollywood films, mate. Honestly.
Nice.
But yeah, it resonates, doesn't it? Like like a happiness shared is a happiness doubled,
Yeah.
a duck shared is a duck halved. So
Yeah. No, Amrit's very open with me. I'll sit down and, this. And it's great, and he's good and he's really open like that. I can be quite closed. For me, my safe space used to be my mum. Obviously, she's passed away now, but every evening she'd be in her bed and just sneak in, "Mum, this." And there wasn't so much back from her. She'd just let me just rabble on for ages. And I think that comes into being a good listener rather than, if I spoke to my dad, get cut off 30 seconds in. So I think it's just a good listener is a good listener.
Yeah. So for me, it's been like, I think what Indy had said about like having a supportive spouse, like sometimes me and my wife argue about stuff, right? Okay, yeah. But then when it is really like about me sharing, especially if it's not related to her, that's something's upsetting me. I really struggle to share something with her. Like if it's she's upsetting me, but like generally,
This is not going to age.
I just want to
well,
share
bro.
with
This
you
is not
that
gonna
you are the
age well.
reason that
I'm
I'm
just warning
upset.
you right now.
no, but then usually she's a very good listener if I've got other things going on and stuff. But then I think one thing she always says.
You're digging yourself into a hole, man.
No, but usually I think Aman is probably one of the people that I go to.
Wait, so you're talking about your partner, and then you're like, yeah, but Aman's the person I go
But
to.
then I'm just saying, like, so my spouse is very supportive, but then also at the same time, there are certain things I don't want to tell my spouse, for example, that I don't want her to think of, like, I don't know, I don't want to, like, open up a weakness in front of her sometimes. I feel like, there are certain things you talk to certain people about. So there will be, like, few things that I won't speak to my wife about. Then
That's really interesting. Why do you not want to open up a weakness?
No, it's not about opening up a weakness. I think it's just also, there are just certain
I
things.
thought you weren't for this whole macho.
No, I
One thing we need to know about Amrit is there's every fourth statement is a hypocritical one.
Full of contradictions.
No, I didn't. I know it sounds like that, but I don't mean it in that sense. But I think there are certain things that there are certain things I will speak to my wife about that I wouldn't to Amen, for example, and vice versa. Like if there are certain things I'll say to my dad or not my mom, or like for example that. So I think there's always you kind of find the people that I find in my life that kind of tend to listen is one, my wife, and then one certainly Amen. And I feel like more recently, I didn't know this would be a person who would listen to me as my dad as well. And I think especially for us Asian men, we find that, okay, any sort of emotional chat with your father is totally closed off. But then my dad is one of those people that don't talk too much. Like, he'll only speak if you ask him for something, right? Yeah, you could be sat in a full room of like 20 people and he will literally not speak. And the only time you'll speak him is when somebody asks him something. So for me, I've never kind of felt that I could have conversations with him until very recently, actually. So that's another person that I've kind of realized, okay, if I really tell them my problems and so on, because I've always not told my dad about things that are bothering me about in the family or anywhere else, for example, right? But I think having those conversations with him more recently made me realize actually my dad is a lot more progressive than I've been thinking in terms of him willing to listen and offering solutions. But often my dad's solution is often just like, if someone's bothering you, don't bother with them. Like, live your own life and that sort of stuff.
That's a good philosophy.
So yeah, I think, my dad's kind of like, I've seen him put that in his real life as well. So like, he'll speak to people. If you're speaking to him, he'll speak to you.
Yeah.
If for example, you're not like speaking to him properly or you've said something to him, he'll just keep a distance. He won't like come back and attack you. He'll just keep a distance. So that's one thing as well. Like, so yeah, I think having somebody there is important, but sometimes you've got to reassess. Sometimes people that are closest to you, such as your parents, can be a source of those people that you can speak
But that's
to.
an interesting point, that rishta between, as sons, dads, that, you hit the nail on the head, man. Like up until, I don't know, say a few years ago, I would find it very difficult to speak to dad. But for us, it was finding the medium for expression. So for example, dad finds it very hard to speak, but he'll send me lengthy emails So, for example, he just went to Vietnam for like 3 months, just going, I don't know, with his mate, find himself or whatever. So he had fun there, but he sent me this email. I was like, I've been reflecting. He's going again. So he sent me this email before he came back, and he's like reflecting on life and how things are changing. This is how I feel. I'm very proud of this that you've done. I was like, wow, like you think all these things, but if I'm with you, I wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you should tell me, right? But his medium is writing. I was like, whatever your medium is, let's keep doing it.
But I think what I'm hearing here is how powerful that relationship can be. And I think again, to kind of share from my experiences, I've been really fortunate that my dad's been really open with me from a young age, to kind of talking about his struggles. And he only, I remember when we were like, I don't know, I was like 9 or 10, and he would say to me, he'd say, "Oh, can you just kind of come sit and listen to me?" And I would sit on the side, and he'd be lying on the bed, and he'd just be talking to me. And it was only 6 or 7 years, 8 years later that he said to me, actually, when we were having those conversations, that was when I was going through a really difficult patch in my life. And the conversations that we had at that point were really important in helping him to feel supported. And I think that's such a, that needs to be such a powerful relationship. And how can the folks in here who might be, fathers one day, how can we actually, take those steps to be that type of father?
Well, I was just thinking whilst these guys were talking, and I think back of my relationship with my dad, and sometimes we call it mistakes, but my dad drinks, and I've learnt from that sometimes when it's got much. It's one of the reasons why I don't drink alcohol. So I just reflect on my dad drinking and how that's impacted me, and then maybe just via my actions my children will see. Oh, I don't want a podcast. So I don't know. That's all of my thoughts there, really.
Yeah, I think it's...
I have a question for you, sorry. How's your relationship been with your dad since your mum passed away? You don't have to answer this, by the way.
He's sort of filled the role of dad and mum. So fair play to him. He's doing a lot. And we've grown closer. Yeah, he's good. He's a good lad.
He's a good lad.
That's very wholesome. So
I think in terms of, if I think about fatherhood going forward, because that's something we have been, me and my wife have been slightly having these conversations, and they're starting to kind of begin kind of thing at the moment. We'll be a year married coming May and so on. So we have started thinking about it. But then one of the things I think really, there's a few things that you learn from your parents directly, but then there are a few things you learn from your parents indirectly. I think a lot of the times, if I've been hurt in the past, this is why it was so on, so on. It's maybe because my dad didn't do this, my dad didn't do that. So sometimes you think, what did your parents didn't tell you, or what your parents didn't do, and how that's impacted you, and you try and kind of reflect upon that, and then you hope that you will be a better father, essentially, right, going forward. So I think one of the biggest things being in terms of fatherhood, at least I think, in terms of parenthood, even if you're a mother or a father, right, is about being present. And there's one thing about being there in the same house. But then that's not the same thing as being present with your child, I think.
Intentional.
Yeah. So I think that something is what I want to be, that is something I want to do for my child, right? Okay, yeah, be present in wholly. It doesn't necessarily mean just living the same roof. But yeah, I think that would be probably the biggest kind of thing I would take forward. And I think a part of me is always actually thinking, when I do think about parenthood and stuff, a part of me is always very, very terrified and very scared that if, for example, I don't understand my child, or if I fail them in something, the consequences, you just sometimes think, you don't want your child to kind of not hate you, but
you're overthinking this way too
be disappointed.
much.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So that kind of does also scare me sometimes when I do think it like that. I'm just thinking, what would I do in these sort of situations? How?
What you're doing there, and it's exactly what we're talking about today, the kind of mental health, right? It's
Yeah.
the what if game.
Yeah.
And the what if game has no end. This is why, when you have a thought inside here, it's a mountain.
Yeah.
And as soon as I tell Indy, this is half the reason I do a podcast, is therapy. It's like, no, it's not that good. And this is why brain dumping, getting it out, whether you're journaling or speaking to somebody, works. But yeah, getting caught in that what if game trap is...
I know, but you can't sometimes help thinking even though I don't even have a child right now,
What do you call shit out of it?
we have a dog, and then, No, I think the dog...
Speak to the dog. Very difficult character.
No, the dog seems happy anyway.
What are the metrics for measuring dog happiness?
Well, I don't know, if I don't think, I'll walk into the door and he'll just whimper up to me and pee himself in excitement.
It's not past 9 o'clock.
I mean, if you want to show that you're happy,
I hate that dog. I can't stand that. I don't mind dogs. I'm not a dog person, but that dog, the face the dog's got, it's just not cute. It's like,
It's a Pomeranian. He's super keen. At my wedding, I told him that your Mendy is happy with that dog. Sorry? Your Mendy, yeah, because he's really my.
he actually threatened that, and I was on his wedding day, genuinely stressed about that.
Because it's not like my dog. It's my sister-in-law's. It's my wife's sister's dog, and like it's their dog. So often when I go there, like he comes to stay with us. Sorry?
you're saying
There's a lot in here, guys.
No, I'm just saying, I treat that dog as a family member, so I'll say to them, and look, from my side, you're going to go to the Melanie, and then from their side, there's going to be your
This is what I have to deal with.
Did this actually happen, by the way?
This genuinely, it didn't happen.
If it had happened, it would have been I'm just based these.
I was going to say, it would peak if the dog watches the podcast.
I think what you said though a lot, that parents do teach you a lot indirectly. I think I agree with that a lot. I mean, I remember going to India and my dad would stop and keep giving rupees to a lot of poor people, and as a kid I was like, Dad, we need to go, come on. And even now that's a habit that he's got. He's very charitable, and it's something that I've taken up now. If I see someone on the street, just give a pound or something, and it's that thing. It's if you're on your phone at home all day, your children's going to see that they want a phone. So, it's the habits that we take forward.
Yeah, but then I think what I was trying to get at is like certain things, like if you've seen your parents do certain things a certain way, you then try and think, oh, actually that's the wrong way, and then you think of trying to do the opposite. That's what I've learned things like that as well. My dad is like very hands-off with a lot of things, and I think he's right in being hands-off with some things, but I feel like that approach doesn't always work in every situation. So he's been hands-off, like, he's very hands-off with like if it's like, back home and stuff, he split from my dad and their brother and stuff, they split from the eldest brother. My dad's like kind of attitude towards that was very like laid back and stuff, and then so my other dad had to step in and really be firm with the eldest brother and so on. So in those cases sometimes, and that's just one example I'm giving of like 200, where my dad's attitude to things always is kind of laid back. So I've learned sometimes you can't be laid back in certain situations, especially with your family matters, like immediate family matters, for example, dealing with your wife or your children. So there are certain things that you will learn from your parents essentially by looking at them, how they've done things and how that's then made you feel, and then you try and make sure you don't do things like going forward that way yourself as well.
And I think you touched on a really important point, which is conflict.
Yeah.
How do you feel we deal with conflict now as kind of say Punjabi men, and actually what can we be doing better? Because I think conflict in various ways can impact mental health, well-being, our sense of self, that kind of thing. And I think it's something everyone will come across in different ways.
Conflict with who?
I want to say like Umra, you mentioned kind of the kind of wider family conflict, right? Where it might be parents and siblings and that kind of thing, rather than say that a kind of partner-focused childcare is. So more like the kind of wider thing, because I feel that's something that every family in different ways, in different forms has.
Different families have different philosophies of how they deal with things. So some families, for example, will give a lot of give to their siblings. So parents will give a lot of give to their siblings. Some will never talk to them again. Now, our inclination as the youngest ones looking up to that will judge that very straightforward and say, that's wrong, I'm going to do the opposite. But we don't look at the circumstance of why they got to the place where they have with that outcome. Trying to ask parents that when you're young, they're not going to tell you. When you're older, they might give you a bit of information and you can say, in hindsight, I understand why you acted the way you did. But trying to take everything that your parents have done and seeing it as correct all the time, it's not the right way to live your life, because they're flawed. All of us are. We're all going to make bad mistakes and choices. Resolving conflict is one of the hardest things when it comes to families, because there's so much involved there. Like, if my dad stops talking to his brother, I don't get access to my cousins anymore. And that's people that I've grown up with for years. So you have to consider the wider implications of your actions. So when parents end up submitting to their sibling, they're probably thinking the longevity of the family and the immediate impacts it's going to have on my kids is more detrimental than me getting up on my high horse and having the ego.
So it's thinking, isn't it? It's a lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
What's the bigger play here? I find a lot with conflict resolution is whoever you sit down with, it's A, there has to be a willingness of both sides to want to resolve, number one. And number two, it's a lot of behavior is about intention. This is how I perceived your behavior. What was your intention behind the behavior? You need to have that honest conversation first, just to understand that. Otherwise, it's all assumption. The problem in Punjabi is like, oh, yeah, you did this because of this. And that's it. But it's not. Everything is nuanced. Everything is grey. You have to get into the grey first, and then once you've understood context, then you can have a conversation.
But that's what I'm getting at in it, like being able to have that conversation about what happened and the intention behind it. There's a lot that can stop that, especially for Punjabi men. So how is it that we can overcome that? Because as you said, it's an important point.
I think it also what Indy is saying, it's if you're wanting to resolve a conflict, that let's say you have a conflict with your sibling, right? Okay, yeah, it's also talking about it's also understanding what the other person's mentality is towards it. Right, so sometimes you could have a fight with your brother or sister, for example, right? Yeah, and you're always going to have that. You've probably just grown up fighting with each other and so on. Sometimes things are a bit more serious than others, and I think it comes down to realizing, okay, obviously you want to maintain the relationship that you have with your siblings and so on, but then also I think if the person on the other side is not willing to kind of resolve it as well, then it kind of what in that situation, what can you do with yourself is the one thing I find kind of very confusing. Right, so no matter how much effort you make to kind of resolve things, sometimes it just doesn't get resolved, and in those cases, sometimes you feel like perhaps time is the best healer in that case. But I don't know, it's a bit weird. It's a weird one actually.
It's a tough one.
Sorry, it's a tough one. It is a really tough one actually, because you don't know if to leave things or whether to pursue things. Because sometimes you find pursuing that conflict is going to make it worse, even though you're trying to resolve things. Or you kind of just sit on it and then it just gets worse as well. So it's really hard to kind of find a balance between the two.
It depends on the relationship you have as well. In a lot of Punjabi households, I've got a bit of an age difference with my sister, and so it's not that.
Are you younger or older?
I'm younger.
Okay.
Yeah, so 14 years between me and my sister, and she's almost like a second mom. She's helped raise me, so it's not that sort of typical brother and sister, go in a room, mash up all their stuff, walk out. There's more respect there. So I think it depends on your family situation and how you deal with it.
And I think that it's a hard conflict question.
What about conflicts in friendships? Do you handle those differently? Because I feel like with friendships, you've got to be more sensitive.
Yeah.
With families, you can give a lot.
I think with me, and if we look at mine and Aman's history kind of thing, friendship-wise, I mean, there was a period, I think, at uni when I was just off, on one, and then I wasn't speaking to Aman for ages, in second year. So we had first met each other at uni, on the very first day of uni, and then we instantly became really good friends, and Don't be cushy. No, the reason we became instant friends was literally because we realized actually we lived very close to each other. We were both
convenience. Give me a lift, I'll give you a lift.
Yeah, no, it was more something like that. Literally, we realized we were at the same train stop.
It's all the value in it.
No, it was literally the same thought. It was weird because we were literally getting off the same train stop and stuff, right? Okay, yeah. So,
that was a bit weird.
I think one of you was following the other one.
And then it didn't help that a couple of years later we got our house 2 doors down to him.
I mean, the way Amrit resolved the conflict between us is he spent the whole of his second year in uni at home, didn't attend any lectures, stayed at home and watched Game of Thrones. So that's one way to do it.
No, it wasn't a whole year, it was a semester. I wouldn't say a whole year.
Felt like a whole year.
No, but then I think the way we kind of resolved where it was, we never even talked about why I was upset or why you were upset. I don't even actually remember why we hadn't talked for a semester, but then at the end of it, I was just saying to Aman, oh man, I messed up, I didn't come to uni for this whole semester, we've got these exams, and Aman was like, yeah, okay, that's fine, here's all the notes that you need. And yeah, and then I don't think we've ever had conflict as such with friends. But I think with friends, any sort of other conflict we've had friends, we've just talked about it. If Aman's had kind of conflict with another friend of ours, I've just tried to explain to him, don't think too much into it, this isn't what they mean. So I think with friends it's a lot easier than family. I struggle with family, resolving conflict with family than friends, really, honestly.
And do you agree with this?
I think with me and you, if we focus on us two, if we have a problem, I tend to just say to you, this is what I'm feeling, and you'll settle very easily. Oh, what are you saying? You'll settle me. You'll settle me very quickly, and you'll just stop it, and there's nothing wrong there. So there's a thing in our friendship where him and my wife will participate in something called Hindi bashing, which is where these guys will ring to you on a daily basis. I will look at my phone and these two are talking and I'm like, what strays am I catching right now? And I'm looking at it and I'm like,
you'll go into the bathroom and you'll come out with 50 messages, and it's just gone
Sanj and I, we take each other on, we go to different levels. We are considering making it like some like live Twitch, so you guys can see it as well. It's pretty fun. You need to give consent.
But then, if it goes too far, and this is a point I wanted to touch on, with the band side of it, I might have a shit day, like a really bad day. And if they're saying stuff, I'm like, genuinely, stop it. And they'll be like, oh. And I'll be like, I'm not being sensitive, but now is not the day, today is not the day. And if I say that, they respect the space to stop, which is important. I don't think guys get that properly in some friendship groups, where it's like a full pile-on. And then that turns into a thing where the guy's fighting for his life, basically, in the group, getting rinsed. But it's impacting him, and he might be having a really bad day. And if you say to someone, I'm having a bad day, stop it, I don't need this today, genuinely. If they don't stop, then you probably need to consider the friendship a little bit.
And I think there's a really important point there that ultimately boils down to like emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Like if someone's saying, oh, stop it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
People should be able to tell whether that's just them saying it in a junk or actually if it's them saying it.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a group setting, everyone's egging everyone on.
Yeah.
Everything can be
Banter,
brought up.
what is the definition? Where's the line of banter? That's the question.
Subjective, isn't it?
That's the thing.
But if you try and draw a line and people keep overstepping it, then you have to consider, is this worth pursuing anymore as a friendship? Is this really a friendship, or am I just the butt of the joke all the time?
I think that's actually there's a really hard question in there about like friendship between guys.
Yeah.
That is not easy.
But that actually reminded me of something. There was, in a group chat of about 15 Bhangra lads, there was one lad that he was made the butt of a lot of jokes.
It happens in every single
And then, he didn't
It was
come,
Indy on our team.
It wasn't me, actually, someone else.
he didn't come to 2 or 3 of the next sort of social meetups, and I was like, oh, he's not been here, what's going on? And then maybe we all started reflecting on, we need to chill out with the jokes of it, so that just came to mind.
That's it. And it happens so much. Like it happens so much. Like I would say even in our Taraki team, I purposely made myself the centre of all the jokes. Then it just doesn't, then it's just not anyone else.
I am the target, that's it. Yeah.
That's it. You put the target on your own self.
But I think it's also difficult as well in friendships. It's like you don't want to be seen as being overreactive or being oversensitive as well. So I think
This is a Tarchina.
yeah, I think
If you are a sensitive person, then what?
Exactly, and I think it's a bit difficult in that sense with friendships, because I think if people that are truly your friends, like they will know where to stop and where not to like stop. Like so, whereas people sometimes kind of just pursue things anyway, and I think in those situations it becomes very difficult for you as the person who's being the butt of the jokes. Is like you also then start thinking, well, like actually if I start reacting at this, maybe they'll just feed more onto it, or perhaps I'll be targeted more because people think I'm a bit too sensitive and stuff. It's always difficult trying to get the right balance in those cases.
True. It's hard. I think this conversation about friendship is a hard conversation. I've spoken to people I've known for a while who I've connected back with over time, and they've been in a situation where they've literally said, the friends that I have, they're not my friends. And that's a really, really hard thing to look at and to reflect on, because it's not easy to say, oh well, you need to get them out of your life. You need to be able to offer people alternatives, and ultimately I think, again, even thinking about our Java City work and stuff, a lot of it is just rejigging how Punjabi men relate to each other. So not everything needs to be, surrounded by or kind of centered on stuff that is just taking the piss out of everyone for everything. Actually, you can do that. That's all good. Actually, but there's a part of it which involves a bit more emotional intelligence, having conversations like this in a group, rather than just one-on-ones. Because we know the one-on-ones, it's a lot easier to do the one-on-ones.
Yeah.
That's it. But I know a lot of people where I've had a conversation with someone about whether it's mental health, whatever, one-to-one, and it's been completely fine. And you're in a group like this, everyone wants to talk about it, but no one's going to say they want to talk about it in a group setting. And for me, that's why the group setting is so powerful. Because as you said earlier, it can make or break.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just takes one person. Even in some of the work that we do, having seen how the group settings have changed over time and how people being open has allowed other people to be open.
That's it.
It's just wild.
I have a question for the panel then, boys. Right, if there's something where if you're in one friendship group and you are the butt of the joke all the time, and you're thinking, if I leave this group, I have no other friends, what do you do? Because that is a real possibility for a lot of people. We're in our 20s, 30s now. You have your friendship groups pretty solidified. The max amount of people you're going to meet are going to be colleagues,
From
work colleagues, maybe friends of friends. But what do you do?
I think ultimately though, you do need to evaluate your energy, what energy you're receiving, if you're aligned with that energy. And, you know, there's no point holding on to a friendship if it doesn't feel like a friendship.
And you never know. You know, sometimes you meet somebody at 40 and they're the best person in your life. So I would say it's tough, because when you first had that question, I was like, damn, that's a good question, Indy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think ultimately, if it's not for you, it's not for you.
So you say cut it off.
Cut it off.
But then I think it's easy said than done though. Like, how do you cut off a friendship that you've had, let's say, since uni, like let's say going back 10 years, and now that you've thought, okay, this is enough. So I think there's always conversation about that as well. Like, you know, whilst, okay, you're feeling like, okay, I'm the butt of the joke all the time, but then I think cutting off is also like a big act in itself. And then also, how do you have that conversation?
It depends how you do it, isn't it? Because what you're suggesting probably there is that you're sending a message, blocking people. It's very intentional. There's some people who just stop responding and they'll just kind of ghost, right? And then holly, that's it. It's gone. So it depends how you do it. And it's what I'm saying is, what is the value I get from this relationship?
Yeah.
That's what you have to evaluate. I don't know about you guys, but now, most people probably in the room, one hand, the number of very, very close people in your life. Outside of that, it's still a fun mahal or whatever, you get together. But the close ones, I don't think they change much once you've established them.
Definitely become less and less for me.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
Is he one of them?
Yeah.
I think that friendship conversation, it's not an easy one again, and we could talk again for like another hour on the friendship piece. But one thing I just want to raise, I think, before we go into the kind of question and answer section as well, is a conversation around Punjabi men's mental health and how we connect and engage with Punjabi women. Because, you know, we had, you know, people message me at Taraki and they say, why don't you do work for Punjabi women? I say, we do. we run monthly groups. We've helped various groups get up and running. And that's there, and it's all fantastic. And we've got a great team led by and for Punjabi women. But in this conversation today, we can't talk about Punjabi men's mental health without thinking about how we interact and connect with Punjabi women, because often within the context of society more widely, it's often women who have to take on the additional burden of being, especially if they're with a Punjabi man as a partner, take on the additional burden of doing all of the emotional holding and all of the emotional legwork, and being a therapist for someone that could actually have developed that support in a different way. So how can we, as Punjabi men, not only support ourselves but grow, so that we can share some of that responsibility a bit more? Because at the moment, I just think it's deeply unequal.
Yeah, I think it starts with you recognizing the changing roles in society, right? If you look at our parents' kind of generations, it was very much so like the woman kind of like did all the legwork in terms of whether it is like, you know, looking after the children, dealing with all their stuff, right? Okay, and then like doing all the housework, and then also if obviously like in our generation here, sort of like also like going to work as well, right? So whereas if you've seen all the attitude, like usually the dad goes to work, comes back, you know, expects his roti to be made and done, all that, goes to bed. The woman comes back from work, does all the housework and all that, right? Okay, yeah. So I think it's recognized the change of roles. Like I certainly don't want to kind of, and this is something that my wife's made me realize a lot more. My wife comes from a different background as me, right? So she comes from like Maharashtra, she comes from a big city, whereas we come from Punjab, from the rural Punjab, right? Okay, yeah. So the attitudes are very different in terms of how her kind of parents interact with one another, and as opposed to how my parents interact with one another, right? So it's kind of made me realize actually, you know, I can't be, I don't want to say I can't be my dad, because my dad is genuinely, it's kind of like painting my dad in a bad picture when he's actually not. But in a way, I can't be the same person like how I've seen the men in my family be in that sense, right?
But does it work for your mum and dad?
I don't know. I don't know if it does actually. It's just like they've not had a conversation about it. Again, it's just for them. It's always just about getting on with things and so on. Like, you know, doing whatever they have to do to make sure there's food on the table and all that stuff. Okay, yeah. So I don't know I think if you were to sit them down and like force them to have a conversation about like whether what's ever happened in their life has worked for them, I'm pretty certain like my mom would have a lot to say, and so would my dad, I think, right? Okay, yeah. So I think it's about recognizing the changing kind of attitudes in society and moving forward with it. You can't expect your spouse, in this case, like, you know, to do everything, especially the emotional work as well with the children. And I think a lot of it kind of comes from how you've been raised and what you've seen in your families, but then it's also trying to look beyond that to see actually, I don't know how to. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience here. You see, like this is what I felt like in my family, and the way I've seen the way her family functions is totally different actually. And it's been perhaps it's because I've not seen that in my family is refreshing for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would certainly try and push myself slightly out my own comfort zone and do things that I wouldn't otherwise do, and speak about things with my wife that I often wouldn't have done otherwise. I think if my wife hadn't told me.
I have a lot of sympathy for Punjabi women in the second and third gen, because stereotypically you would assume a lot of them have just seen their mum be a housewife and they want bigger ambition than that. They don't have a role model as such to look up to and say, I want to take my life in a professional capacity, whereas a woman that I can mirror and take and see how they've done it and then use that as a blueprint. Guys have that, it's easier. For girls, it's harder. Now, there is obviously the pull that some guys are going to want, which is when you have a baby, the maternity leave is larger for a woman. They are expected to fulfill that and be able to take that space and time. They're fulfilling a stereotypical role, and that's tough for them if they've been in a professional environment and they want to stay in that professional world and return to it one day. They probably have an identity crisis within themselves, and guys have to be sympathetic towards it. We can't look at how our parents did it and say, our parents did that way, I'm going to use that same linear answer in today's world. It doesn't match. Holding space for women as well is very important and difficult. The amount of times I try and sit and talk to my mum and say, Mum, what's actually happening? Because she's bouncing off the walls and doing a lot of stuff and a bit forgetful and a bit frantic. And I have to sit and say, what's actually going on? And it takes her a very long time to open up, because she's always concerned about how everybody else is feeling, being the host and running things, which is great, but it's not fair to put that much weight on someone and expect them to just maintain it at that pace. So trying to have a space for Punjabi women is very difficult, and guys need to be able to give them that space to just be themselves. Living at home with your family and bringing another woman who is from the 21st century into an older traditional world is a big adaptation period for them, and that's hard to navigate as well. Gordon, I'm sure you can allude to this, being at home. You've had your wife move in with you, and she's accustomed to
6
the way
years,
that you guys
happy.
do things.
Yeah.
For sure. But there's a transition period for them to go through.
Yeah, and the transition is more so when Shindy came into our house, Mum and Dad were very open. It was like, look, this is our kar de maryada. This is how we do things, right? And that's from a financially, this is your contribution, chore-wise, this is your contribution, responsibility-wise. Now, it works in our house because A, everybody has their own space. Space is very important. B, everybody has their own professional ambitions. Everyone's doing their own things. They have their own friend circles. So although we mingle, the space is the key element, and there's respect. If there's respect, there's harmony. If there's harmony, then that kind of relationship can flourish. There's obviously many, many, many benefits of living with your parents. But sadly, some people, if they can't get on and there isn't that harmony, then they'll sadly have to move out.
But you've also said that you have to occupy a few roles as a son, husband. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so the juggling of that. And it's the appreciation that they're different boxes, they're different hats. And again, credit to my master actually. This is, I don't know how long ago this. I was young. I wasn't even married. I wasn't even with Shindy at this point. But he was like, when you get older, he's like, you're going to be a husband, a father, a son, and a brother. And they're all different rishta. And don't mix them. And give each rishta that respect. Like miles. Like when he said that to me, it had no relevance because I wasn't in that kind of scenario. But now looking back at it, it's that same thing. There's no competition between rishta, right? And credit to Mum here. Mum's like, your wife now kind of is your priority, so I don't want to be overbearing as a mum, right? So she's like, so sometimes, if you feel
That's
like...
big for her to admit.
No, she's like, sometimes if you feel like, I'm not like lovey-dovey around you anymore, it's because I don't want to confuse that kind of energy. That's your wife's role now, let her sit into that. I'm your mum, I love you, I'll always love you. And when she said that, I was like, wow, like you're really thinking about this stuff, man. Proper Taraki there, right? Proper like aggressive thinking. But yeah, these are conversations you need to have. But finding a partner who can hold space for you and you can hold space for her, I think has to be part of the criteria when you're finding someone to spend your life with. That's really, really, really important. The honeymoon phase, you're happy-dappy, you're going on dates and stuff, very easy. But when, shit hits the fan and shit is bad and you really have real conversations. For example, when I was going through my anxiety, there were days in the morning where I didn't want to go to hospital. And speaking to Shindy, and basically this game we were playing, this what if game, right? She was like, so what's in your head? And then to take it out the head, tell me what you're thinking. And she kept going down, drilling down until I got to the point where it was like, okay, this is what I'm actually concerned about. And then she'd be like, okay, so if this happens, what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, you're going to die? I was like, no. She's like, so you're right then? Have you got options? Yeah. And now I feel better. And I'm like, oh, wow. And at the same time, when that happened to Shindy, I was like, okay, I need to be that for you now. How do I do that? It's just that you need that reciprocation in a rishta.
I think I've been very lucky. So mum and dad, they both obviously came to England together, started a business together. Dad always talks about how without mum he couldn't have done it because dad didn't speak English at all. Mum ran all the office, everything there. So she assumed a non-typical role there. Dad loves making his torque, and he can whip up a mean dish. And so, since mum's passing as well, it's like dad can do the roti, I can do torkas. So I've been fortunate to experience a variety of roles, and I think it's just being aware of, I think Amra made a great point. It's like, times are changing. And again, just like Indy said, it's not that, previously a linear approach was adopted. I'm not going to apply that. You just go with what you've got and you see how it unfolds.
Versatility.
I feel bad for you because you've been last to answer all the questions.
It's good because I got my answer from you guys.
He's talking about torka, yeah. He makes a terrible torka. Like, so don't be taken into by
Real question.
He's been trying to cook for like 5 years.
Can you make tarkali beans? Can you make tarkali beans?
I can make torque wale beans, and Indy needs to try them.
Thank you. Guys, you're a witness here now. Indy's going to try tarkali beans live.
I need to, actually, yeah.
Lovely. And so we're about to jump into the question and answer session, but before that, I just want to ask everyone for one quick thing that gives you hope. Because I think it's all good, us kind of thinking about some of the challenges, some of the strengths, what we have now in the current and the present. But what is it that gives us hope to drive towards a better future? Because ultimately, for me, that's what drives me in my Taraki work. It's that not because I can see all the issues now, it's because I feel hopeful and optimistic for the future ahead of us. What gives us hope?
What's your hope?
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Good indeed. Put the question back on him.
Buying myself time, there.
My hope, I guess I get my hope from my faith. I get my hope from being a Sikh. I get my hope from knowing that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. We're not starting from zero. We learn so much from those who came before us. And for me, I learned so much from my faith. And, to have that backing me, it makes me feel as though, I can, Taraki can, we can all take on the future that's ahead of us. So that's for me personally.
So my
Good question.
It's
I want Amit to go first.
Oh, go on, sorry.
Well, it's true.
I was speaking to a friend recently, and he made a great point. It really resonated with me. I think it's applicable here. He said that what we often do is we misalign goals with happiness. So, I want this much money. I want this much property. I want this many followers on Instagram. I want this. But really, those goals shouldn't be your ultimate happiness. Your ultimate happiness is something else that's, I want a beautiful family. I want this. I want to have a great relationship here, more meaningful things that will be there in the future. And I think if you adopt that approach, and, the numbers will always go up and down. They talk about, the Maya, the illusion, that's just a game. But you need to probably sit down, reflect what actually makes you happy. Is it that, we bought a pool table at the house recently, and since we've got it, my nephew, my brother-in-law, we play it every weekend, and we've got a pool tournament. I'm the champion, of course. But it's these things that make us genuinely happy. So that's what I'd add there.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not to be too soppy about it, but I think like the
if there's a space where you can't be soppy,
No, but I would say probably like my wife, because since then, since I've been with my wife, I found a new purpose, and I'm excited by the future that we both will share. Right, so it's not necessarily, I don't mean materialistically, but I just generally mean I'll be starting a family with her, right? And just the things that we've got planned, with things we want to do, that's the kind of the new purpose I've found in life. So I very much kind of attach that in terms of my future aspirations, they're kind of very much tied to her, right? And we do have arguments and so on, like any couple, but usually I've found that genuinely some of the most happiest moments of my life in the recent past since I've been with her have been associated with her, and with her around it, and the way she just looks after everybody, looks after me, and my family and so on as well. So yeah, I would say it's tied into my relationship with my wife, and then whether it's whatever I come to do will be kind of whatever we do. Well, it's just the hope of building together, isn't it? Like building a little space in the world for yourselves.
Co-pilots.
Yeah, co-pilots. Yeah.
I think for me, priorities have changed. Hope for me is spending time with people that make me feel energized afterwards. So if I spend time with people and I come out of it feeling happy, not feeling like I feel drained or they've just dumped all their shit on me, it's nice to come out of that and feel happy and feel like you had a good time. So I take hope from having really good quality experiences with people, whether that's friends, family, going on experiences. That's important to me.
Does now count?
Yeah. One.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good answer.
I guess for me, the couple of things I try and think about in terms of hope are progress, not perfection. So getting away from this idea of perfection, progress in all aspects of life in small steps. And the other thing is a Jim Carrey quote, which I try and live by, which is the most valuable currency there is the impact you have on others. That's it. For me now, like Indy and I, we went on a staycation for the podcast, doing some strategy work. And but like, Indy, why do we have this podcast? Why do we have this space? Why do we have these conversations, right? When we started, it was different reasons, but now it's about impact. It's social impact. If we leave this world and people have benefit from the conversations we've had, that's the seva. So for me, it's legacy.
That's just reminded me of something. Sometimes we think, oh, to improve the next day, we need to gym, or I need to eat better, or I need to do this. But if you don't do those things the next day, don't get stuck in a rut that, okay, I'm not improving, there's not progress there. It's I've seen the Taraki, the pictures you sent, progression is not this, it's the weight.
Yeah.
So
Thank you all very much. This isn't me crying, I've just got
Certainty ho gaya.
If I did, I would, don't worry. Beautiful, thank you all so much. Can we give our panelists a round of applause, please? So unfortunately, guys, we have run out of time for today. And I just want to say a massive thank you to all of our guests, to our live audience for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, and so much love. Sharing so much love with us all. So thank you all for all of that and everything that you've put in for today. And just to say another massive thank you to everyone who helped to make this happen. Two people who are pivotal from the Taraki team, Karan and Japnaam. Gursimran, who helped us get the work out there through B2 Digital Strategies. The team from Cloud 9000, the team from Indy&Dr, and also the team from Ox-Boy Productions as well. So thank you. And we hope that all of us have taken something away from today that we can take back into our lives, that we can take back into the lives of those around us. And, together we can make progress. We can, Taraki kar sakda, we can drive forward together. So thank you all so much, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well.